Hello, and welcome to my third attempt at filming my December reading wrap up. It's been a time. Overall, I'm thankful because it's happening because I got new technology and I'm very excited to have it. Like now, I can show you things on my phone because I've got an actual camera, which is very exciting. Anyway, this video will cover every book that I read in December plus one spare from November, and I'm gonna tell you why you might like it or why you might not like it. That way, hopefully, you'll find your next read. I don't know what has gotten into me this month because at the beginning I was like, I'm probably not going to read that many books. I'm just going to kind of chill. I met my reading goal. Like, it's fine. There's no rush, which I don't ever rush myself with my reading goal. It's just like a fun number, but I don't have to hit it. I read at my own pace. Anyway, I told myself I wasn't going to read anything else. And then here we go. I've got 8 books this month and I started another one yesterday because I'm insane, but it's so good. I'm reading Phantasma. I thought it's a TikTok book. I'm gonna hate it. So far, I'm having so much fun, and that'll be for another video, but there's that. Let me tell you, I think I have, like, 4 hours of sleep. I don't know why, but my body keeps doing this thing where it's like, "Oh, we're gonna stay up the entire night, no matter how hard you try to sleep." Really fun. That happened to me yesterday. So before we get into the 8 books that I read in December, I want to start with one leftover from November, and that book is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This book is a thriller. It's very dark. It doesn't have any feel-good emotions in it. It's quite disturbing, actually, and there's very heavy grief. This is, however, a very good thriller. It's one of my favorite thrillers that I read this year, I think. The twist at the end was something that I definitely didn't see coming. It also had the whole, main character isn't quite sure if they're sane thing happening, and I enjoy reading that. It's nice when you're both kind of confused. It's just really chaotic and stressful, but, in a good way. The setting in this book is also really nice. You're on a college campus for the most part, and I don't remember which one, but I'm pretty sure it was like an Ivy League school. It's definitely very gothic feeling, almost dark academia, but our main character's not a student. In this book, we've got a main character who is trying to solve a murder and prevent more murders from occurring. And that is all that I will say about it. Overall, I did really enjoy this novel. It just didn't quite have that 5-star quality for me. It was just good. I would recommend it to people, but I wouldn't, adamantly recommend it to people. I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. I feel like that's pretty fair, and you probably would not like it if you really can't handle just very dark subject matter. Like, this book does not make you feel good. It makes you feel sad and disturbed. Hopefully, you can decide from there what you're gonna do. My first December read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. I hope I said that right. This book is a rom-com. It's very light, fluffy, not super serious. We have got witches. There's like a cute little magic system. It's very creative, and I actually found it really endearing to begin with. But then toward the halfway point in the story, I just really wasn't buying the romance. And there was also this drastic tone shift. It just felt like I was buying the world and then they took it a little too far. And I was like, that. Mm. You might like this book if you just want a really low consequence, light, funny, found family, good time. You will probably not like this if you need everything to be consistent in your novels. You need things to make sense. You need to believe the romance and not just feel the lust. Like, you need to know that they love each other. You probably also won't like it if you can't stand things that just don't make sense. Like, there was something, I'm just gonna call it Pavlov's gun because that's what it was. Google Pavlov's gun if you don't know what that is. But there was a Pavlov's gun and it just never came back up. And I was like, is there a sequel, or are we just gonna bring up this huge piece of lore and not address it? That's where I'm at with that. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars, and it got, 1 out of 5 peppers. I think there were, 1 or 2 intimate scenes, and they weren't super detailed. It was, a little bit of description, and then it kinda closed the doors. Let's go ahead and move on to the next book. The 3rd book that I read in December was another rom-com. This one was a little bit more unhinged. It's called I'm in Love with Mothman by Paige Lavoie. Yeah, I read that. I have an entire video that I shot on this book, and I don't actually know if it's gonna see the light of day because I'd never made a video like that before. I just don't know if the execution was there. I might have to refilm it, but I did read this book for a video, so I'm not gonna say too much about it. I do plan on addressing it in the future. But overall, I enjoyed this more than The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Like, It was just better, and it was not good writing, but I think it was intentional. Like, it read like 2013 Wattpad, but I really feel like it was on purpose, and it was actually funny. Like, I laughed out loud, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not gonna say anything else because this is for another video. I will say that if you want a stupid rom-com that is, like, really funny and actually has a really sweet romance, like, you wouldn't expect the romance to be so good, but it's actually really good. And if you're a Twilight fan, you would like this. Overall, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. As far as spice, I think this book had probably 3 or 4 explicit scenes, and they were pretty vivid. Nothing crazy happened in them. It was pretty run-of-the-mill, beside it being with a cryptid. But, you know, just know what you're getting yourself into. The next book that I read in December was yet another rom-com. I was reaching my limit. The thing is, I had a hold on this book with Libby, and it became available, and I'd had the hold for like months, and I knew that if I didn't read it now, I wasn't going to be able to read it for like another several months, so I just did it. This rom-com was fine. I was not in the mood for it, so that probably messed with my rating a little bit, but overall it was just good. It wasn't exceptional, it wasn't bad, it was fine. It was very atmospheric, so if you wanna read something that's gonna make you feel like you're on the beach and there's, like, forbidden love, and that's, like, it. It's really not that exciting. There were, like, high stakes for a moment, but then they were resolved, and it's like, "No, the stakes were never high." Like, why was there so much stress around this if it was gonna be resolved like that? That frustrated me. I also feel like Felix is just after you read a bunch of fantasy romance and then you read just a normal dude who shucks oysters, you're like, where is your torment? Where's your horrible, traumatized past? I just can't quite fall for you if you don't have that, you know? So he was just a little bit too safe and comfortable and chill, and like him very much. He was fine. My overall rating, 3 stars, pretty average. As far as spice, there were a couple open door scenes, but they weren't like super open. It was like kind of open and then it would close it and then like reopen and close it. Not super intense, not super frequent. Do with that what you will. Finally, after putting myself through that egregious number of rom-coms, I was able to take a little break, and I read Sinophagia, which is a collection of Chinese horror stories, and this book was so good. It did not disappoint. I feel very happy that I picked it up because it was just available in my library, so I thought, why not? I needed something to listen to while I was working. This collection is really cool for many reasons. The translator, like, specifically chose certain authors to make sure that there was a diverse array of stories and storytellers. She also had these little author's notes between stories where she would tell you about some of the more culturally significant parts of the story to give you a bit of background context. So it was cool because I felt like I was learning little things about Chinese culture in between these stories, and they were also just very nice. Like, they were just nice little stories. Some of them were so creative. Like, I was reading them and I was just impressed because how do you come up with that? It was so cool. I very much like these. Overall, I gave this collection 4 stars, and, like, think about that. That's with the stories that I didn't like so much and the stories that I liked a lot. So, an average rating of 4 stars, pretty dang good. I did screenshot my favorite stories as I was listening to the audiobook, so I'm gonna go through and read those to you. Know that I will be butchering these names. They'll also be in the description so that you can actually, like, read the words, copy paste, whatever you need to do, because I cannot say them correctly. There was one that I was listening to, and I was like, I love this so much. Like, I felt like I was sitting around a campfire in the dark and somebody was telling me the story, even though it was like 2 hours long. So the first one I really liked was Records of Xiangxi. Again, in the description, because I know I did not say that right. I also really liked Forbidden Rooms, and another one that I screenshotted was called Ti Ning. Do with that what you will. I think that this book could be good for a reading slump because it's like you can have little bursts of dopamine after finishing stories because they're just like little pieces in the book. So maybe that would be good for you. None of these stories were like actually conjuring feelings of fear in me. They were just kind of ominous, disturbing, maybe thrilling, but I didn't feel afraid. So I wouldn't super be worried about it terrifying you and keeping you up at night. It's not like that. They're just kind of fun campfire stories. And by fun, I mean disturbing, sometimes covering dark subject matter. I don't know what else to say about this, so I'm gonna move on. The next book that I read in December was The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden, and I read this book for my book club, which is on Fable. It's free if you want to join, check the description. We read a book every month. And I don't want to say too much because I'm going to have an entire video devoted to this book, but I did enjoy it. I also found it kind of slow. So I would say you might like this if you want to read something super atmospheric and you want to read it over like the span of a month and just meditate on the artistry of the writing and the atmosphere and the characters and the culture. Like, if you want to take your time with something, then this would probably be good. If you need something to enthrall you and keep you hooked, this is not a book for you. It's also not, like, terribly exciting until the very end. My lizard just yeeted herself out of her hammock. Queen, do you wanna come out? I'll go get her. Alright, lizard acquired. As I said, I will be covering this more in depth in another video, so I'm not gonna say anything else, but overall, I gave it 3 stars out of 5. I could appreciate a lot of things about this, but at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like the right book for me at this time. It was so incredibly slow. Luckily, after I read that, I moved on to an absolute banger. So good. Quite possibly one of the best books that I've read this year. Actually, no question, one of the best books that I've read this year, if not the best. I don't want to decide that right now because comparing this to Mexican Gothic, that's difficult. That's something I don't want to think about right now. This book is a historical piece that takes place during the Spanish Golden Age around the time of the Inquisition. It's about a servant. She has some magical abilities. It's nothing crazy, but she's discovered to have these, and then the rich person that she works for is like, "Oh, you have these abilities. I'm going to show you to my rich friends, and you're going to get really popular." So she does. But like I said, during the time of the Inquisition, so there are witchcraft accusations flying around. This book is insane. Listen, I know I'm recommending it really highly right now, but I also need you to understand that this book is not for everyone. When I read this book, I felt like I was being propelled to continue by a morbid fascination because this book does not make you feel good. It makes you feel disgusted. You read these characters and you're like, ew, you're making those decisions. Gross. How can I root for you? But also, I am rooting for you. It was just really cool to watch the characters make decisions and do things in this story. Another thing this book does that's like really epic is that the main character, she's not attractive and she does the thing where she's like, I'm really nothing to look at. And of course, when that happens in most books, then they have like 4 people who are falling head over heels in love with them. And those people think they're like the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. This book is not like that. Literally, everyone would walk into a room with Louisa and they'd be like, "Ew." And even her love interest, the first time that he saw her, he was like, nothing really to look at. But then I'm sorry, Queen, I'm distressing her. Where are you going? But then, after they started bonding, he was like, "How could I have ever not found her beautiful?" And I loved this romance. The romance is a really small part of this book, but, like, I loved it. The ending of this book is insane. I could talk about this for a very long time. I actually gave it 6 stars out of 5 because it was that good to me. I immediately wanted to reread it. I will be getting a hardcover copy because I listened to the audiobook, and I need to, like, see the words and meditate on them, you know? So, you would probably like this book if you enjoy character studies and maybe if you enjoy books that can be kind of confusing at times with a lot of moving pieces, you would probably not like this book if you are looking for something that is fun, that will make you feel good. If you're looking for characters that you can really root for, this is not your book. But if you just want to study something that is like disturbing and intricate and beautiful, but also disgusting, this is a good book for you. As far as spice in this book, there's like a hint, but it's mostly closed door. Like it kind of mentions a couple things and then it closes the door. Like the book is not about that, so don't read it for that. It's not like the fantasy romances that we sometimes read on this channel. It is different. I'm gonna move her because my arm's getting tired. Okay, I guess she's just gonna be there and I don't get an opinion in the matter. That's fine. The next book that I read this month was Belladonna by Adalyn Grace, and I had heard a lot of things about this book on different corners of the internet, so I had some expectations going in. I knew that the love interest was Death himself, which was an interesting choice. I don't know how I feel about the execution of that. You would probably like this book if you want to read something that feels kind of gothic, mysterious, kind of like Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. It's Regency era, the stakes are very high, and there are some cool paranormal things that also go on in this story. I think you probably wouldn't like it if you're like a super analytical reader and you look at the character of Death, who's supposed to be millennia old but behaves like a typical dude. But you know, for the vibes, for the fun time, for the cool mystery, it's a good read. It was a good time. Just it's not going to be the most astounding thing that you read all year, in at least in my opinion. I also just was not sold on the love story. Like I feel like there was not enough communication and bonding happening for that to be a thing. What are you doing? Overall, I gave this book 3.5 stars. And as far as spice, there's like a little bit. Honestly, I feel like it's a bit suggestive for something that's supposed to be YA. The twists were nice, but there were just a couple things that did feel very YA about it. So do with that what you will. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was pretty average, like slightly above average. The last book that I read in December was Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and I picked this up with kind of low expectations because it's a TikTok book and you never know how those are going to be. But I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised with this. I would say that if you're looking for something that is just like all of the other fantasy romances you've read before, like you want to feel the same way you felt when you read Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, this is a good book for you. But aside from that, it is very repetitive in that all of these tropes you've heard before. You've got the fated mates, the magical tattoos, the mind to mind speaking, etc. I don't want to say too much and give too much away, but like at this point, if I say it has all of the romantic tropes, you know what I mean. To me, that can matter. Like with When the Moon Hatched, I really didn't like the way that book was executed. It had a lot of hot tropes in it, but they just were not organized well, in my opinion. So I didn't like that book very much. I gave it 1 star. But this book, it had those tropes and it organized them well. And it also had other pretty creative elements. Like I thought the Quicksilver was really cool. And I also liked that our MMC, he was a little bit different. He was like actually clinically insane, and that's kind of fun. There was a scene in this book where they were forging a sword for someone, and then the person was like getting the sword, and I literally was almost brought to tears. Like it was just good fantasy. There were a couple things that I read, and I was like, that feels like it could be a plot hole, but just ignore it. It's not there. If you want to have a good time, this book is for you. If you are tired of the same things, if you are really, really paying attention to plot holes and they'll bother you a lot, if you get bothered, if you see a couple grammatical errors, this is not really for you. But man, if you want a fun time, if you want a fun little fantasy romance, it's a good time. Overall, I like this book, but the fact that I had read these tropes so many times before kind of prevented me, excuse me, ma'am, kind of prevented me from giving it 4 stars, so it got 3.75. And as far as spice, there's a good amount of spice in this book. I would say probably 10% of the book is spice, and it's nothing crazy. Like it's pretty normal stuff. There are like a couple edgier things, but not really. I don't know. Just be aware that that's there. And with that, that is everything that I read in December. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found your next read. If you want to find me somewhere else on the internet, I have Instagram, TikTok, Fable, and I would love to see you there. If you would be so kind as to leave a like on the video, 1 like equals 1 boop on the snoot for Alejandra, and 1 comment equals you will make me happy. Pretty tempting, I know. I guess that's all that I have for you. See you next time.